Hello everyone. In this video I would like to review my response to Jesse Jackson's 1988 Democratic National Convention speech. I should point out that Jesse Jackson, he is an accomplished orator and he knows a little something about using rhetorical modes of persuasion. So the first thing I'm going to do, the way I'll go about responding, is to locate his central position, the main crux of his argument in this speech. To find it, since I've already read the speech, I have decided that this section of his speech is where I can find the main idea. So looking at these two sentences, I think this provides us, the audience, what he is trying to communicate to his audience. So he said, "We meet tonight at the crossroads, a point of decision. Shall we expand, be inclusive, find unity and power, or suffer division and impotence?" It is clear that Jesse Jackson wants his audience to agree with him that the former is preferable to the latter. So without wasting time, here's how I go about responding to his speech. So here I have already summarized the author's background information. I have also tried to articulate his main points right in this paragraph. And so my next step, as I said, is to respond. So I started off by making an observation that this is a tool that many political candidates running for office use. They try to classify or situate themselves as an underdog, somebody who has suffered injustice, discrimination, poverty, hardship, or experience of some sort of hardship that put them in a disadvantageous position. So given that background, it's easy to see how they would try to appeal to the audience. Now, Jesse Jackson does something a little bit different. Not only does he associate himself with minorities, but he's trying to reach out to a large section of the audience. So, as a political underdog, he has a goal. And what is his goal? Well, since we already know that he is trying to promote inclusivity, it is clear that he has an attempt on the way he's going to do this. And so I said that he is trying to reach out specifically to many minorities. I believe his speech is mostly aimed at them. How do I know this? Because he starts off his speech with reference to Rosa Parks. If we take a look at the speech at the beginning, he starts off by acknowledging the different races in the audience, but then he's humble to admit that Rosa Parks is the mother of the civil rights movement. Or as he said, all of us who are here think we are seated, but we are really standing on someone's shoulders. And who is that person? According to Jesse Jackson, it's Rosa Parks. So that's how he began his speech. But not only did he begin his speech that way, but he has in mind a particular audience he's trying to convince. And in my response, I have argued that he is trying to win over large sections of minorities, but he is not just only targeting African Americans, because he's an African American, and of course he can identify and relate with their struggle the most. But I also argue that he's also making reference by making reference to women's rights, to other minorities like gays and lesbians, making reference to workers' rights and to other minorities enduring one disparate treatment, whether in America or abroad. He is positioning himself as a fighter for civil rights. It's no surprising because that's part of his ethos as a civil rights activist. Not only does he mention Dr. King's name twice in this speech, he mentions Rosa Parks' name twice. He makes reference to other civil rights activists as well. Looking at his speech, I'm arguing in my response that he is trying to keep hope alive by keeping the dream alive. And what is the dream? Well, the dream goes back to Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Because in that speech, Martin Luther King said the following: "And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestant and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty. We are free at last. Now, that was King speaking 25 years ago, because in 1988, that's a different audience. So what does J.C. Jackson do? Well, you will notice in his speech, he made reference to the following, and here's what he said. Soon after when he's going to introduce Rosa Parks, he immediately make reference to the audience. He addressed the population. He famously said, "When I look at this convention, I see the face of America, red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We all precious in God's sight. I see the real Rainbow Coalition." That is what he claims to see. All of us who are here think that we're seated, but we're really standing on someone's shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Rosa Parks, the mother of the Civil Rights Movement. So here, Jesse Jackson is claiming that the faces of America, which basically the audience is addressing, we are all dependent on somebody else's struggle. We are all dependent on somebody else's fight, and he basically is giving Rosa Parks credit for leading the fight in the civil rights movement. But he's not only using Rosa Parks to promote himself as a political candidate here, but he's also trying to say that since Rosa Parks was fighting for the struggle of many African Americans, that he is an embodiment of that dream, not only a dream for African Americans, but also a larger audience. So it's not surprising when he begins to reference women, gays, lesbians, people suffering from HIV/AIDS in his speech. So that is my response to Jesse Jackson's 1988 Democratic National Convention speech.